Italy? Whiskey? Ah, Italy V! You could never unlock my secret. Oh no! Suddenly hit! Hello, Libby! Let's begin. Indeed.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian, and I am joined by Bex, or Becca. Thank you, Rebecca, for coming on the show. This is the Fireside Chat. And yes, the camera is working like I thought. So even though it's frozen in here, it's good with you. So, yeah,
hey,
like,
how do I
welcome.
change my name? Can I change my name to BX?
Oh, yeah, I can change it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Was that,
No,
did
it's
I,
okay.
like... Did I, yeah, I'll fix it right now.
Yeah, people know my name. It's just like, well, I'm Becca. Like, my mom calls me Rebecca when she's mad at me, but that's about it.
Am I
Yeah.
giving you PTSD, like mom PTSD? I get it. Let me change it really quick.
Okay.
I'll just make, it was BX, and then I thought, that looks maybe too informal, but we'll just do that. Okay. So, welcome back to the show, Bex. What do you want me to call you? Can I call you
That's
Rebecca
fine.
or Becca?
Yeah,
Just
you can
Becca?
call me Becca. Becca's
I
fine,
knew
yeah.
I knew a girl
Bex,
when I
Becca,
worked.
Bex.
Yeah, when I was in when I worked at an art supply store years ago. I was a manager there, and one of my employees, she was a good friend of mine. Her name was Rebecca. We called her Becky all the time. So, hi Becky in Minnesota. All right, but anyway, so welcome to the show, Becca. And the reason why I wanted to bring you on is mostly because of all the incredible research you do. We've talked in the past about how the Department of Homeland Security and all these other sort of government agencies have been spying on and putting their fingers into all kinds of online spaces, particularly spaces where men, tend to like congregate with each other. For whatever reason, incel forums and other sort of, other parts of the male-occupied spaces of the internet. I'm sure it's not exclusively that, but that's kind of like how we got to talking. And I really appreciated the work that you were doing, and it was a real eye-opener for people that was watching. To what degree, the government and all these sort of other organizations in bed with them have been kind of like moving around these spaces. But since then, there's been other stuff. I saw that you were on Side Scrollers with Stuttering Craig, and you were talking about, I didn't watch the whole thing, but your stream actually got like cut off or dropped or something, right?
Yeah, that was so weird, right? I'm trying to figure out what's going on with my picture. Does it look bad on your end?
No, it doesn't look bad on my end at all.
Okay.
Wait, does it?
Like on YouTube, it's like all messed up. I'm wondering if there's like a setting that I don't have right.
Oh, like you're blurry or something?
Yeah, hold on.
Yeah, go ahead. We'll...
Yeah, it doesn't give me any kind of ability to change the settings, so I guess it just stuck this way. But
well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a way for me to raise the
that's
the
probably
frame rate
maybe
or
it's on my end. I'm probably just an idiot. No worries.
It's using the Camlink 4K. Is that what it's supposed to be using?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
it tells me what
I'm
camera you're
I'm
using.
just dumb. It's just my YouTube settings, and I'm just a moron.
Ah, I see. Yeah, people are
Okay,
saying
it's
you
still a
look
little
good
bad,
on
but-
Rumble. That you look good
Okay,
on
good.
Rumble. So
Okay. Cool.
yeah. Anyway, so you were on Side Scrollers, and what were you? Just in short, like what were you trying to bring to their attention there? What was that about?
Yeah, so when it was the same stuff that I'd been talking about with you, basically, it's funny because I tend to get into these situations where I will start talking about something, and nobody will really listen. Well, you listened, obviously. I mean, I guess that you have a little bit more reason to listen to this specific thing. But, nobody really paid that much attention, I guess, at the time that I was trying to expose another arm of that same grant funding program, right? That had to do with gamers. So, I mean, I had seen this a year ago when I was doing the same type of research we talked about last time. I had seen that the DHS Homeland Security TVTP program was also being used to fund these like esports teams that were like really creepy. I mean, like they were like basically Homeland Security was like teaming up with these marketing experts to form esports organizations that the sole purpose was to like study these kids for counterterrorism purposes, right? And it was geared towards like middle schoolers, and it was just weird. I was like reading it, was just sitting really wrong with me, and so I started.
Yeah, they were like in Roblox. I think that isn't that like a kids thing. I'm not even sure.
Or Minecraft, I think, is the one that they did more openly, but there were also some that weren't as open about the fact that they were just counterterrorism programs, and it was really it was creepy. And so when the Gamergate stuff started to come out, I was like, yes, I have seen this, and yes, it was linked to a bunch of DEI stuff that doesn't have anything to do with counterterrorism and doesn't prevent terrorism in any way. I mean, it's pretty silly to think that by forcing diversity onto video games, you're somehow going to end racism, or when really all it does is just create more pushback, right? And more validation for the legitimate bad actors that are in video games preying on kids and trying to indoctrinate them into radical ideologies. That does exist, but pushing DEI, like it's like, you know, step 1, push DEI, step 3, end terrorism. And it's like, how do you link that, you know?
Yeah. It's like using
really,
it's like using the stuff that's already like that's going on the internet that might be like kind of sketchy as a precedent to actually just like, you know, monitor citizens and like remove our freedoms essentially, right?
That
like
too.
eroded
that
our freedoms.
Just like we saw with the Manosphere stuff, yes, it is absolutely used to censor people. And then, you know, on the other end of the spectrum, you've got these companies that just do DEI stuff, and that's what they want to push. They have an agenda has nothing to do with terrorism, right? And they weaseled their way into this grant funding program and try to like make up some crazy explanations about how it reduces terrorism to get the money so that they can push DEI and have the funding to do it. So it's just really crooked and corrupt. And I think that's what I was talking about on there, was like this counterterrorism machinery that a lot of people don't even know exists, that funds a lot of stuff in this online space.
Yeah, and speaking of which, did you know about this story? I got this story from Reclaim the Net, and it's entitled "State Department Wants to Use Video Games to Tackle Ukraine Disinformation." Did you hear about that? I'm going to share my screen.
Surprise me at all.
I will send you the link. I'll send you the link. And
it's inoculation or pre-bunking. So rather than debunking bad information or malicious information, they try to inoculate people to it early on by basically seeding it into propaganda. I mean, it is propaganda. It's like they're trying to say, but it's good propaganda. It's for the good guys. And
it's the good. It's the good kind.
Slow, right? Because like who makes the decision there? And I'm a type of person who's pretty much against all propaganda. I want to see us have a freedom of thought again. I don't feel like we have any freedoms at all if we don't have our freedom of thought. And so that's
absolutely. So yeah, I was bringing this up because we're going to be getting into some. We've talked a lot about the state, and these are sort of like, are they GMOs? Would that be a fair way to describe them?
NGOs, like an NGO.
NGOs, that's what I meant to say, not GMOs.
Organization, yeah.
Different topic. These NGOs and their involvement, but there's other things to this that might be too spicy for YouTube. So what I was gonna do, guys, if you're watching on YouTube, there is a link in the description to Rumble. To this video on Rumble, and we're gonna stay on Twitter because Twitter seems to be okay with the spicier content. Elon doesn't seem to have too much of a problem with it, but we are going to be cutting off the stream on YouTube and Twitch and Facebook because those places are totally not going to be cool with what we might be getting into. But we're going to be talking about just in brief, and maybe you can give like a basic overview of this. We're going to be looking at the Order of Nine Angels. Is it angels or angles?
Angles.
9 angles? Okay, the Order of Nine Angles, 764. Which is, what's a short way to describe it that's probably like somewhat safe for YouTube?
Well, it's a child predator and exploitation and extortion network that's basically grooms kids into self-harm and sexual exploitation, and then extorts them into providing more and more type of violent content. It's been linked to the Order of Nine Angles, though that's something that I've been researching very heavily, trying to figure out what the exact relationship is, because most of the major networks are, well, now that the mainstream has stepped in to cover it, thank God. Because if you were following me earlier this year, I was the only one talking about it and people were calling me crazy. And then the cavalry came in, and now we have Wired and Washington Post and all these places that have been talking about it. But I think that the 09A link is pretty tenuous, so people don't really understand it. So that's what I've been kind of digging into myself to try to understand better. But in general, the 764 stuff started as a Minecraft community probably a decade ago. Little hacker kids, little wannabe hacker kids, right, started doxing their friends and extorting them and getting them to do like mess up stuff on video. And it became this kind of gross, it metastasized into this gross kind of community of kids doing messed up stuff. At some point, though, recently or within the past few years, I believe it was infiltrated by the Order of Nine Angles, which is I think we've talked about that briefly before. You know, they did the same thing in the incel community. It's not like the Order of Nine Angles, a satanic neo-Nazi organization. It's not like they created incels. They just saw a target community that was vulnerable, and they knew that they could get in there and try to influence them to do basically domestic terrorism type stuff.
Yeah, they're like radical accelerationists. Is that a fair way to describe it?
Yes. Yes,
but they use other vulnerable young men to sort of like do this work for them, whatever.
Right. You're not going to see Order of Nine Angles going out and committing a shooting and then going, we did this, the Order of Nine Angles. Well, like you would see ISIS or someone do. Instead, you're going to see an incel do it and I did it for the incels, right? And that's why it's so hard to track these guys, because you have really no way of knowing who they were provoking and in what like internet website they were doing it on, right? And so that's what we've been kind of digging into really deeply, trying to kind of untangle and shine a light on this stuff, which is pretty dangerous, as you can might imagine. It's pretty dangerous territory. These guys don't like to be brought into the light, so they fight back pretty hard.
And it actually kind of makes me think, because it's funny too, because the media reports on these things and they only focus on, I guess, what they call like the incel problem. Did you hear about this recent incident involving a mass stabbing or a stabbing in Australia?
Yeah.
And there was this video clip of supposedly of the father of the guy who did it. And he was basically, and he was described as, he targeted women because he wanted a girlfriend, he has no social skills, and he was frustrated out of his brain. And that basically became the whole topic. And I retweeted that post and I said, what can be done to prevent this in the future? Because I think that when the media talks about incidents like these, and I don't know if you looked into that Australia incident, but when the media talks about this, they kind of make useless statements like we have to do something about misogyny or these men, or we have to break up these spaces. But if this kind of, predatory behavior is happening from these groups, what are the odds? And I know this is I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on for a moment. Okay. What are the odds that the media knows that this could go deeper, but they just either they choose ignorance or they choose this narrative is more convenient to propagandize the public? Like, why wouldn't they do the work that you're doing is what I'm saying. Why aren't journalists being journalists in this case?
That's a really good question. I've asked this a lot. I think that in general, it's too big in scope. And now I have talked to and been dealing with several media groups recently who are doing documentaries and doing stuff like this finally. There's one, the CBC, which is Canadian. They did a YouTube video on their investigative, their investigative video series called The Fifth Estate. And they have a really good one up about 764 there, and they're doing, probably going to do more of those. And I get contacted by a lot of researchers or journalists lately asking me about my research into accelerationism. So I think that, and it was a good start to get the Washington Post, right, to actually make a story about this. That was like pretty big, right? So just this year, you're starting to see people start to listen. And I think part of the reason is, number one, mainstream media is going to be, they have to push this agenda, this divisive narrative to basically be competitive these days, right? So of course it's going to be, oh, it's a gun problem, it's a misogyny problem, it's a, and they're not going to devolve too deep into the weeds, because first of all, it's not something that we can claim that there's like factual evidence on court record about, right? And so a lot of it just has to do with, this is still an area that's being researched. It's not really like something that's widely known yet, but I think we're getting there.
Are there any like kind of elements that are either talking about these things or are involved in these things or might appear to be involved in these things that you think are completely like distractions that are way too popular in the conversation? Like things that could just be, like Pizzagate. I asked you about Pizzagate before as an example, right? And some people think that that's legit. Some people think that's just like, it's like an op of some kind or whatever. Is there anything like that going on? Like things that people could look out for? Because sometimes it can be hard to see, which way to go if you're looking for the truth.
Well, yeah, and it feeds right back into that grant funding problem that we were talking about, right? Because as soon as you hear the mainstream start saying, oh, this is misogynistic violence, we have such an increase in misogynistic violence, right? All that does is just add, tally points to the number of extremist-related cases that we've had, and things that these researchers or these NGOs can basically capitalize on when they're writing their next grant proposal. And now they can go, oh, when this happened in Australia, we saw this incel related stuff, and this is our justification to continue to research this group of people, right? Which might be fine if they weren't, what I say all the time, targeting the targets, right? Because how often did you remember this kind of thing happening before the internet became widely popular, right? Not as nearly as much. And so I would almost guarantee now that every incel related shooting, stabbing, or any kind of, national socialist or terrorism kind of related, white supremacy related, all of those guys were being targeted and indoctrinated and radicalized online. By people who are actual terrorists, right? And it's not to say that the people who commit the terror attacks aren't the terrorists. I mean, they are, right? But they're like proxies. And so until we can actually start exposing the people who are behind the scenes, provoking them and figuring out what are we going to do about these people, it's kind of pointless to continue studying the incels and acting like their violence is all a product of society, while ignoring the fact that we have real verified extremists in their forums provoking them to commit attacks. And some of these extremists are ISIS. Some of them are actually the Islamic State trying to recruit them. Some of them are white supremacy, National Socialist, neo-Nazis. A lot of them are. Some of them are these weird Order of Nine Angles accelerationists. So when we start targeting the terror organizations and stop I think that the violence will naturally decrease, right? So it's like we're trying to just chop off the branches of the tree instead of knocking it down at the root. It's just going to grow more. Yeah,
that's right. All right, so what we're gonna do is we've been going for about 25 minutes. I'm gonna move over to Rumble. I'm gonna end it on YouTube because I want to talk to you about Transmaxxing, which is a very sensitive topic on YouTube and Twitch, but you guys don't want to miss this. It is very weird, but I think there is something really sinister going on. And
there is.
Like absolutely. And we're gonna get into that as well as more on this Order of Nine Angles and all these kind of like all this stuff kind of seems to be pointing in a similar direction, but I don't know if that's going to be what Bex believes. But If you are not on Rumble or X, although you can watch it on X as well, but you won't be able to comment, and I don't know what X does with the videos once they end. I think they sort of disappear. So if you're not on Rumble, go to Rumble right now, and we're going to continue the conversations there. So right now I'm going to turn off the stream going out to Twitch,